Hello again. This little screencast is in lieu of recording in class for the Humber making a web page portion of Ronnie Michael's class. So we're going to start right from the web part with Dreamweaver. We've just finished slicing all of our photos and graphics that we're going to be using on the web page. So here I have them in an images folder. And that is within a site folder. You can see it on my desktop here, my site. Inside it is images. You can ignore the columns file for now. So let's just take another look at this file. If you were in the class, you'll remember that we started by breaking out the overall look at the site. So we've got a header, we've got a content area. Those are the two main sections for this site. A lot of the sites that I saw are going to be single column. They won't have to worry about doing content beside other content, but we will look at that. Here we have an H1, an H2, a horizontal rule, some paragraphs, got a photograph, as well as some more graphical images down here. And there's a background image with some static. So this is pretty much ready to go. And we've already sliced them. Now the most important structural thing we're going to create first is the overall container for the site. This thing here. Now, we're going to get a color? Yeah. This is what I'm going to call this container a wrapper, and it's going to have some properties to it that we're going to set in CSS. One is that it's going to have a width of 960 pixels, and we're going to give it specific margin properties that'll cause it to center within the browser. If we didn't have this, the browser would then draw the whole site as though it was full screen, which wouldn't be so great. So we're going to put that into a div element. A div is simply a box or a container type of HTML element that we can put things inside. So that'll be the first thing we create. Let's go over there now. Okay, so we're in Dreamweaver. Come back to this file. We're going to create the main file for our site. So I'm going to go File, New. If you haven't updated to Mavericks yet, you can enjoy the speed on my 2009 MacBook Pro. We're going to do New HTML document with no layout associated with it. Create. Here we go. Dreamweaver automatically creates a little bit of the head, and in the body here is where all our content's going to go. I'm going to go into split view. There's code view, design view, and split will show both. Now we want to insert a div, and we can do that either in code view or design view. I'll do it each way. So I'm just clicked here into the code view. I'm going to go insert. And there's actually a lot of stuff here, like there's horizontal rule. We looked at those lines that went across the design. You can insert an image through here. We'll be doing that. But we want a div. So I'll just insert that. There's going to be a little dialog. We want to give that a class. We're going to never use ID, but we'll give this a class of wrapper and say OK. And it's now created this HTML here. It's wrapping div class equals wrapper. And we can see it appearing in our design view. Now I'm going to undo, get rid of that. And if I was in design view, it's the exact same process. Insert div wrapper. Awesome. And it puts in some placeholder content as well. That's very cool. Now we're going to save this document. We wouldn't want to lose all that work, so I hit Control S, but that's under File, Save as well. And we're going to save this into my site, and we're going to call it index.html. That's the first file your browser will look for when it's surfing a site. And if we click on this little planet thing, we can preview this in the browser. I can't wait. Brought to you by Mavericks. All right. Lovely. Now divs just by default don't have any styling to them, so you can't see them. They're invisible containers. They truly are the building block of the web. It's probably the most fundamental and common HTML element you'll find on absolutely any website that you surf. Cool. So now let's style this a bit. There's a couple ways to do this. First, we're going to need a style sheet. So we're going to go to our CSS Designer panel. If you don't have that, it's under Window, CSS Designer. And we're going to create a new CSS file. I'm going to call mine style.css. And I'm going to leave that at link. Say OK. Now, Dreamweaver has created this file. I'm going to just go back to my, I almost called it Windows Explorer. Finder? Yeah, it's created the file just right in the same directory as where index is. Perfect. Now, I do find it's a little quirky. If you wanted to look at it in Dreamweaver, it's right next to source code here, and the star means it's not saved. So I'm going to hit save. And I find it something that I often forget to save. So we'll do some CSS, and I'm like, why isn't that updating? And it's because you need to click into here and hit save. Or I think there's file save all, which is all the open files. All right, so we have a style sheet. We've got an HTML sheet. Now it's time to do a little styling. If we want to style this wrapper, you can click on it, and it gets highlighted in blue. Or if you're in code view, you could click in here. Or down here at the bottom, you see body, wrapper. This shows you the elements that you're clicked within. So I could click on that. However you select it, you need to select it. And then you need to come over here, click in CSS Designer on the style sheet that we're going to write our CSS into. They make you do this step because you could have multiple style sheets on a site. And once that's selected, we're ready to add a selector. I'm going to click plus within the selectors. And Dreamweaver just writes selector. Before, you can see it's active, it's highlighted it. I could type something here. But I'm going to either hit enter or click out of it and click back on it. And below in the properties panel, it gives us a little interface to set some properties. So I'm going to click within width, set it to pixels, put 960, hit enter. I'm going to set the margins to auto on the left and the right. And this is what's going to center it. Now, if I just go to design view, I can see that that's taking place. I can go to my CSS and see that it's written that. While I'm in there, I'm going to save, get rid of that star. And no changes were done to the HTML. I'm going to click back on the wrapper, and then I can see my styles here again. Just for making this a little bit clear for ourselves, I am going to add a border. Just to, I could do that down here. There's this little border interface, but just to show a different way to do some CSS, I'm going to go right into my style sheet, hit enter a couple times. I want the white space to just differentiate the style from the other stuff, because this is mostly just for development, so I can see that it's working. So I'm going to say 1 pixel solid, and I'm going to put in the hexadecimal value for red and hit save. Now if I go over to my browser and hit refresh, I can see that is working perfectly. So we're going to go back to Dreamweaver, and I'm going to start putting in some content. So second class challenged me to write Ronnie's name, designer, etc. So I've just typed in some real content there. I'm going to highlight this, and under properties, under HTML, I'm going to say that this is an H1. And under designer, I'm going to make that my H2. Now I'm going to style these. I'll do the H1 from the design view. So I've clicked into it, and I just want to click on that H1 there. And I'm going to click on the style sheet. I'm going to click on the plus, and it's giving us the very specific wrapper H1. Now this is a very specific class. It's what we're saying is all the H1s that are within wrapper will look like this. Where that can be too specific is if I have H1s later on in the site that aren't within the wrapper, in which case I would want to just style this as H1. We'll do that for this. We want all the H1s on our site. Just pretending it's going to end up being multiple pages. So we've clicked on the style sheet, we've clicked on the element. Now we're ready to give it some properties. I could scroll through all this, but I'm just going to click on the text filter. And we're going to set a color in a second, but I'll center that first. Great. I want to get that color right. So I'm going to come back to Dreamweaver, or Photoshop. Come to layers, we'll turn off that box that I drew. I'm going to use the eyedropper tool. Where's that hidden? There it is. And do a little click. If I click and hold, I can see that I got the right thing. Otherwise, you can see if you got the wrong thing. Now the color is picked in my color selector. I'm going to double click there and get the hexadecimal value. So I can copy that, Command C, and color. I'm going to put the hash and then that. Lovely. Ooh, a neat little problem happened there. What in the world? All the text is orange. I'm going to hit undo in a second. But I can see that somehow when I left Dreamweaver and came back to it, it selected wrapper. I can see it selected down here and in the CSS thing. So I'm going to undo. I guess it's just not enough to hit undo for you. I'm going to just remove that style. There we go. Click back in here on the H1 now. Is the H1 truly selected? Now hash, paste, hit enter. That's more like it. Now this is the wrong font. Save on the HTML and the CSS. In Photoshop, when we opened the file, I had an error that said I didn't have the Open Sans font installed. But if I were to go over here with the text tool and click into this box, Mavericks would tell you, hold my horses. It's going to take its sweet time. All right. Ooh, you don't have Open Sans, extra bold or Open Sans. So we'll hit cancel there. Great, now we know the name of the font we want. We're going to come over here to Google. Open Sans font embed. Now I encouraged all of you in the class to design with Google fonts because they're easy to install and use in a website. So we're going to embed this in our site in the way that we would an image, and then a user can, when they browse the site, they will end up loading the font off of the server. So, wow, look at that. The first result is Google Fonts Open Sans, and it's purple because we've been there before. Okay, this indeed is the font that I want, so I'm going to open this in Google Fonts. I'm always curious why they have those two pages, why it wouldn't just be one landing page. Okay, here we get to choose the font styles we want. If I was to check all of these boxes here to get all of the fonts, the page load goes right up. We only want to load what we're going to need on the site. So I'm just going to check the two weights that we need. And that was step 1. Choose the fonts you want. Let's scroll down. Step 2, choose the alphabets you want. We're only going to need Latin, or the English alphabet. Step 3, add this code to your website. So copy that. We're going to come back to this page in a second. So we're back in Dreamweaver. We don't want the style sheet, so we're going to go to source code. I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. Right here we say a link to some CSS. Before or after that, to keep all our styles together, just going to hit enter, paste. Now we'll have 2 style sheets getting called in our document. This doesn't change anything right now. It's just attaching the font to the site. Now we need to assign it. So we go back to Google Fonts, and it says step 4, integrate into your CSS. So this font family, here's a little bit of CSS we can copy, and they give you an example over here. So let's just copy that. Font family. Copied the whole thing. So there's 2 ways we can attach this. In our style sheet, if I want this on the whole site, I would just go type body, which is the entire contents that the user will see, and just paste font family Open Sans. It doesn't have to be body. I mean, we could make that the H2, and only that one part would get that font if we save the CSS. Ooh. Just want to see why that didn't take. Love when things go wrong. Just going to do a little troubleshooting here. So there we go. It worked on body. All right. So the one way we can do that is to paste it into the CSS directly. That's probably what I would do in this case, because it's this font is in the entire design. The other way is to not copy the whole thing. Just the value, Open Sans sans serif. Delete that. And then we could do this sort of the more visual way. I could click into this design, select the body here, select the style sheet. See, there's now 2. You can only write to the one. So select styles.css, hit plus. We got body. I'm going to get rid of P. Just want body. Hit enter. And then go to the type properties, and under font family, just double click that and paste. And now Dreamweaver has written that style for us. Cool. So far in our lesson, we've created a style, our HTML, we've created a style sheet, we've inserted a container, we've created an H1 and an H2, we've pasted in a custom font from Google, called it in our style sheet, and we could just do much the same. You know, you could put in your paragraphs of text, you could insert your images or your horizontal rules. Yeah, and keep selecting those items. Like I could select this HR and keep styling them in this way. Now Ronnie has asked me to go over columns in a more simple way. If you were in the first class, I tried to explain floats, and which is the name of the CSS property for creating columns. It is needlessly complicated. CSS was never invented to be the most intuitive design language. But to make this a little simpler for you guys, I've created this this columns.html, which we're going to pass along to you guys. A lot of what I do for a living is finding code that either I've made before or that is open source and just copy pasting it into a project. So this is actually very applicable for you guys to do this. This doesn't look like too much here. We've got left box content, right box content. I've put the HTML and CSS in one file. this is the HTML to have our two columns. We're going to copy this into our existing project. I'm going to do it in code view. And I'm going to just get rid of this empty paragraph. Put some white space around this so we can see what we're doing. Paste. Cool. Now I'm going to hit save, and we'll just update this in the browser. Every time I do it through that little planned-in interface, it creates a new tab. All right. So without the CSS, it doesn't actually create contents. Divs just want to be on their own row by default. So we're going to go get the CSS now from columns. And it's just this whole block. I put a little comment in here. Move this to your style sheet. So we're going to copy. Back to index, go to styles, paste, hit save. Now if we go refresh, there's our two columns. There's a little bit of space going on here, and that's come with the styles. You can see here I've set left box to be 50%, and it's got 20 pixels of padding, and right box is the same. I could change these, so I'm going to change left box to 40%. I'm going to do that right in the code, and I'm going to change the padding to 0, or you could just delete it in that case. Let's do right box from the Dreamweaver interface. If I come back to HTML view, what happens here? I'm going to click on styles. Now you can see it's got all the selectors that are in there. We'll click on right box. Width, let's change that to 60%. I'm just hitting the up arrow right now. That's kind of cool. Click out of there. Hit save. Yeah, it's going nicely. Now these don't look like they're aligned, and that's because of the padding in the right box. Let's just change this to padding left 20 pixels. So that way there'll be a little bit of space between the two columns. Now something interesting is going on here in design view. It looks like a disaster, and that's because Dreamweaver, while it is a powerful development program, it is not a very accurate browser. So even though it looks like a disaster there, the true litmus is Google Chrome. We can see our two columns of content. I'm just going to copy paste in a paragraph. Just some placeholder text from one of my favorite sites, lipsum.com. Lorem ipsum, of course, is like the most used block of Latin text that designers use just as placeholder. It can be distracting to a client to use real copy. They start reading the content, but Lorem ipsum does a pretty good job of representing content without being too distracting. So we'll hit save, and in right box, let's delete this dummy content, insert an image. Browse to our images folder, insert this image. Yeah, this should break a little bit actually. We'll hit save, come over here. Yay! It's two columns of content. Now let's address this image that's breaking out here. There's a couple ways to do this. For one thing, we could, I just guessed at 60/40. That's obviously not accurate. We could just go slice this image so it was the right size, or just in CSS change the width of these columns so they are correct. But I'm going to just actually change this image to have a max width of 100%, which means that the image itself, it's selected row div there. I was being a little bit careless. Select that image. Right, styles, hit plus we want, this is, this is a really good example of where we could add CSS that would maybe be a bad idea. Right, so we want to add a max width of 100% to this image, but this CSS selector wouldn't be a very good one because it would get every image that's inside the right box, which is inside the row, which is inside wrapper. The problem with that when we look at our design is that would actually go to this image as well as these 5. So we should do this thing by a class, which would be a unique to this image. So I'm going to click on this image and under class, scroll down, apply multiple classes. Just erase that and we're just going to call it biopic. Say OK. Now when we come back here to styles, hit plus. I'm just going to delete everything else because it's a little too specific. Anything that's called biopic can get these styles. Max width, percentage, 100. And save our HTML and save our CSS. Now it tucks in nicely right into our layout. Great. We're not going to build the whole layout in the design, but if I was going to keep going, I would click on this image and hit the arrow over and then hit enter, and I could do another horizontal rule and another title and another horizontal rule, and then I could have some images and then link them. You keep going that way. Or you could do it in code view, of course. I'm going to just save that there. So essentially, that's Dreamweaver in a nutshell. I encourage you to just play around with these interfaces. If you get stumped, certainly you can Google it, or as you may recall, I've set up arliem.com/Humber. I have a little form there. You can, if you really get stumped, contact me there. I remember when I was just beginning, the hardest thing when Googling my problems was not knowing how to call them, how to word the thing that I was Googling. And that's where I hope to be able to help you out. Don't leave it to the last minute. I know like the night before this is due, I probably won't be at my computer. And just get out there and have fun with it.